Shalom, learning with you this week commentary on the weekly Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is Behukotai, and it contains within it what is called the section of the curses. The curses are God's promise that if the Israelite people, later the Jewish people, do not fulfill certain requirements, certain commandments, they will be kicked out of the land, and a variety of curses, bad things will befall them. One of the lines of the curses, which I put in the description here, it's Leviticus chapter 26:20. V'tam lariq kachכם v'lo titein artzachem et yivula ve'etz haaretz lo yitein pirio. Your strength will be expelled in vain. The land won't give its produce. The trees of the land won't give their fruit. So on its face, this seems to be a statement of sort of an agricultural curse, that you're going to work hard in your fields, you'll till, you'll tend, but nothing's going to come up. And that indeed is how it's been understood by most of the commentators on the text for many years. But there is an additional midrashic understanding, a rabbinic insight or exposition, which adds a layer of meaning. It's found in a compilation of rabbinic midrash on the book of Leviticus called the Torah Temimah, which gives another meaning, another understanding. What does it mean to say the opening words, V'tam lariq kachכם, you will expend much energy in vain. So here's an alternate reading and understanding. Zeh המשיא בתו ונותן לה ממון הרבה. This is, we're talking about someone who marries off their child, and specifically not just their child, but their daughter, and provides a lot of money to the daughter. V'lo הספיקו שבעת ימי המשתה לצאת עד שמתה בתו. And before the 7 days of celebration, this is a reference to the Sheva Brachot, the week of celebration following a wedding, the daughter sadly, and really you can imagine, tragically dies. Nמצא קובר את בתו ומאבד את ממונו. Such a person not only has to bury their daughter, but additionally loses all of the money that he spent on the marriage. So let's take a step back and what's being described. On its surface, so certainly we're talking about an incredibly tragic moment, which we hopefully will never have to suffer ourselves. And the Midrash is saying that this is a possible interpretation of the curse that's here being described. The curse of V'tam lariq kachכם, you'll expend your energy for naught, and saying it's not just about an agricultural idea, but there's also this can be something that can affect a family. So when it says here that a person marries off their daughter, this is of course speaking about biblical or rabbinic or medieval, up until medieval times. Certainly this was existing in the traditional and in many ways patriarchal system, where the father of the family would marry off his daughter. And it says that there was money spent. Now, you could understand this just to be the money spent on the wedding itself, but this is understood by our sages to be a reference to what we might call in English today the dowry, or in Hebrew, or really Aramaic, the nedunya. The dowry was what the father of the family would give to his daughter and son-in-law, that family, sort of money into the marriage that would help benefit the son-in-law and his family, help pay for the new family they're going to form together. So the Midrash is talking about a sort of a double loss, and you could say that it's hard to compare the loss of a person to the financial loss of money, and certainly that is true. But I think anyone who has suffered a terrible tragic familial loss knows, whether it's someone's death or a tragic medical accident or misfortune, that the additional loss of money, the financial loss that surrounds the loss of life or medical loss, only deepens the pain and the tragedy in many ways. It compounds it. So this is real, and we can imagine for families that don't have much money, if they save up their whole lives in this context of being able to provide a dowry, a nedunya, money to give the daughter to bring into her new marriage, to lose their daughter and family member, and all this money that they've been saving their whole life would really just be, call it insult to injury, or really, as I said, really deepening and compounding this great loss. So this is what the rabbis say is a additional or deeper meaning of the curse of, if the Israelites don't keep what they're supposed to keep the Torah, they'll suffer losses like these. Now, we would pause there, but interestingly, this idea gets further developed by the sages in the centuries after it was written. And in fact, it makes its way into what we call the Jewish legal codes, the Shulchan Aruch, the great Jewish legal code of the 16th century, who notes that an earlier commentator, famously known as Rabbeinu Tam, one of the grandsons of the great commentator, medievalist Rashi, grandson Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbi Yaakov ben Meir, he had a very interesting, lenient ruling on this very topic. Rabbeinu Tam ruled as follows, that in such a case where, and I'll read here from a commentary of the Torah Temimah who cites it, Im kvar natan ha'av hanedunya im, if the father already gave the nedunya, the dowry, im meta ha'isha o ha'ish toch shana rishona, if the woman or the man were to, but we'll focus here on the woman, die within the first year of marriage, below zera kayama, without having offspring in that period, choser hakol le'av o le'yorshei hamet, then all of the money or possessions that were brought into the marriage by the woman would return to her family. Okay, so that's a very lenient ruling, because typically we would have understood, and the general law was that that the woman, once she comes into the marriage with these possessions, I said this is talking about a time when the rules were very much patriarchal. The husband or father was very much the master of the home, certainly economically, and would be the sole possessor of rights to all this money that came into the marriage. That when the woman would die, we would have presumed that all of those possessions would have remained with the husband, even if sadly, in such a terrible circumstance as this, where it happened that where the woman dies very early in the marriage. Nevertheless, it would remain with the father. However, Rabbeinu Tam says no, that in a terrible, tragic circumstance like this, even though contractually the money and possessions would belong now to the widower, the husband, we're going to say that if it happens early on in the marriage, Rabbeinu Tam says within 1 year, it reverts back to the woman's family. And indeed, by the 19th century, the Torah Temimah, Rabbi Baruch Epstein says that became the rule in many Ashkenazic, especially German Rhineland communities. He says, U be medinatenu lita u Polania, even he says in Lithuanian Poland as well, no hagim bate dinin bekilot atikot ladun b'mikrim ke'ela. He said courts would rule just like that just like Rabbeinu Tam said, not only 1 year, sha'ad 3 shanim yuchzar hakol, af bigadim shel isha, lenotnei hanedunya uli yoroshehem. He says, up until 3 years, everything, including not just money, but clothing, jewelry, everything would return to the family of the bride, which is very lenient, a very radical ruling to limit to some degree the pain and tragic suffering. Nothing, of course, can ever mitigate the pain and suffering of the loss of their family. They're not saying that it would, but on some level, the returning of the money would hopefully make it so there's not this feeling of the compounding of the curse that the family would be suffering. So that's a very powerful idea. And I'll go one step further. I found in a later commentary in the 19th century on this midrash by a Hasidic Rebbe, Rav Yaakov David Biderman, the Lulaver Rebbe, says in a very brief comment in the back of the Torah Kohanim edition, says that the fact that Rabbeinu Tam, again, who's Jacob ben Meir of the 11th, 12th century, had such a ruling on this line, Vitam laric kachechem, meaning that your energy will be expounded for naught, is actually the ultimate reason why he gets the name Rabbeinu Tam. Notice it's that same word, Tam, which is the first word in our verse here, Leviticus chapter 26:20, that by making the law, by enacting such a principle, that the family of the bride would be able to recoup some of their financial loss here, he thereby negated the force of this curse. No one, according to Rabbeinu Tam, no family will ever have to suffer the double indignity, the emotional and the financial loss that's described here in the Midrash, this tam loss of exerting your energy for naught, that Rabbeinu Tam gets his name from this idea. This 19th century Hasidic Rebbe, the Lulaver Rebbe, says this idea came to him in a dream, and that was such a beautiful legacy of Rabbeinu Tam to this enactment that would hopefully alleviate some suffering for some people in the world. So a very interesting idea that has significant legal ramifications, all stemming from this verse in this week's Torah portion. Very interesting line. It gets into some tragic, emotionally difficult territory. And of course, all of this relates to the legal ramifications of having this patriarchal setup where there is this dowry, this nedunya, this bride, sort of like a bride price, though inverse in some ways, still practiced in some communities today around the world, not just in Jewish communities, in certain world communities, but worth thinking about and knowing about. And as always, great learning Torah with you. Hope to learn more with you soon.